After the successful 44-episode run of Hanna-Barbera's PAC-MAN animated series in 1983, Namco wanted to capitalize on its success and tasked Yoshiro Kishimoto of Namco Development Division 1 to make an arcade game based on the show, but Hanna-Barbera was not involved in the making of it other than the licensing. But he didn't want to replicate the same kind of experience the other maze layout games, so he took to a sports title instead, Konami's Track and Field, for inspiration. It used a horizontal side-scrolling format, displaying 1 or 2 tracks at a time. And wouldn't you know it, Atari, Namco's partner in history, had licensed said game for their 2600 and 8-bit computers. What he liked about the game in particular was that it allowed the player to become faster by constantly tapping the button in succession. Using this gameplay feature, it would be Namco's first ever side-scrolling platformer on the market, being the 4th ever in existence, after Moon Patrol, Jungle Hunt, and Jump Bug. But they also wanted 2-layer scrolling backgrounds, more sprites, and more colors. It would use a total master palette of 256 colors, with a specific limitation of 16 colors displayed simultaneously like the previous games, which would still be an improvement over the original 6. That would need some new hardware, so the team created the Namco PAC-LAND board. It had a Motorola M6809 main CPU, a Hitachi HD 63701 sound and controls CPU, a video resolution of 288 by 224 pixels, and could input 3 buttons, left, right, and jump, via joystick or relief switches. Using this new board, the game could pull off all of these assets, allowing Pac-Man to take on Team Ghost in this new genre. This would be the first time that a then popular video game character after a successful TV show would get a new space to grow, out of a maze into a land with fellow Pac people. But there would be one last challenge for Yoshiro, as he felt compelled to take a page out of Hanna-Barbera, after their illustrious history with animation, to replicate the vibrant color palette and expand the frames of movement from 3 or 4 per character to 24. That was the same amount of frames per second that the early Tom and Jerry cartoons used. Then fast forward to the Flintstones, which used limited animation with 12 frames a second or fewer. That would mean Kishimoto-san would be doing a reverse Hanna-Barbera. I love being an animation major. Additionally, Pac-Man would also be able to don a change of wardrobe and have a wide range of expressions. They also gave him a goal: to escort a fairy back to Fairyland under his hat, taking a page from the show for the general aesthetic, but giving a reason why apparel would be important for the gameplay. Aside from the iconic travel hat for fairy storage, he also had the winged hover boots for more elevated jumps to dodge attacks from Team Ghost, who were trying to sabotage his mission. The cast still had Blinky, Inky, and Pinky, with Clyde returning, and Sue, named Doris into the regions, joining Proper, now being colored purple after being on a game that wasn't made by Namco. With a bigger cast to dodge, who were now more mobile than ever, as they all got licenses for cars, planes, and even flying saucers, except for Sue/Doris, and became terrible parents with pogo sticks. At least, Pac-Man would be grateful that his controls were so simple. By virtue of Track and Field's inspiration, it was just a button to move left, a button to move right, and one last button to jump. You have 32 levels to go through amongst town, forest, mountains, pond, desert, bridge, and castle. containing 4 rounds, and you were able to access the usual fruits to munch, like cherries, strawberries, oranges, apples, and melons, all with differently set point bonuses. The flagship from Galaxian makes an appearance for 7,650 points. There's also fire hydrants, which occasionally blast water that you can sometimes push aside to give you power-ups, aside from the typical power pellets, like a protective hat or helmet for Team Ghost's Kid Warfare using their little monsters, who also ride buses, by the way, a secret warp power to a later round, and the invisibility power-up that makes Team Ghost completely undangerous. However, to get said hover boots, you will need to reach Fairyland at the end of the game, where it is given as a reward from Mother Fairy for your efforts. And you can finally jump higher and make it home, going only left this time, where Pepper, Chomp Chomp, and Sourpuss from the show were all waiting for you. In the American version. That's better. There's also a Pac-Man themed timer, so don't let it run out. The game design was led by Tsukasa Negoro. The graphics were handled by Hiroshi Ono, making this his third and last Pac-Man game. Yuriko Kaino was the title's composer who put the show's music in its soundtrack. And of course we had Toru Iwatani, Mr. Pac-Man himself, as the producer. The game was called PAC-LAND and would be truly important for platformers to come, of which was test marketed in Japan back on March 17, 1984, and dropped there officially in August of 1984, even when its release would be a dark time for gaming overseas, as the crash was still in effect, which meant the Christmas release that year for Americans would have been met with a whimper. The port for the Famicom on November 21st, 1985 was far from an improvement either, as there was no Mother Fairy and no family to come home to. Talk about a lonely experience. Other ports were of varying quality. Considering how important PAC-LAND is to gaming history, it was inevitable that a stage would be made for Smash to replicate a similar side-scrolling feel to the game, with pretty much the same features as the original, mixing and attacking Team Ghost and Pac's family, which was less than appreciated. But the representation didn't stop there. Those fire hydrants from Pac-LAND are used as Pac-Man's down special, which makes the battle more chaotic, as they spray water either from the top or from the sides, or can be used as a projectile that can be thrown below you. This move was also the lucky one that would get 2 more custom versions that could be found in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS, with On Fire Hydrant that expels fire instead of water that could hurt Pac-Man as well, and Dire Hydrant that explodes. Despite having a stage that has a middling reputation, it cannot be understated how boring platformers would be without PAC-LAND.